Hey everyone, so I did not put out a video last week, although I did record one and edited one and uploaded one, and then I, at the last minute, decided not to release it. The reason was because it was mostly a reaction or a response to a lot of the comments that I was getting on the virus video from last week. I was getting a lot of like conspiracy theory, nutty tinfoil hat crap in my comments, and I guess I was in a mood, and I did a video responding to it, and I went on a rant about conspiracy theories, which I've already done before. Anyway, I went back and forth on it. Do I want to release this? And I eventually decided no. It just seemed kind of angry and stooping to a low level, and so anyway, it's out there somewhere, but you will probably never see it. But hey, let's do the opposite of that now, shall we? I wanted to kind of do a video where I talked about stuff that I love. And I'm going to try something that I haven't really done on here before because I had to like download a plugin and everything so that my streaming platform, OBS, can actually run music or sound from videos that I'm playing. I've actually never been able to do this before. There's just some stuff that I've been thinking about, like just stuff that I really love, and I've never really talked about it before. And I thought, you know what? Let's just do that. Let's focus on something good. You know, let's get away from the quarantining and the social distancing and all the bad news out there. Let's just talk about something good, which means that probably nobody's going to watch this video. So there you go. But the first thing I thought I would talk about, and again, this is going to have music in it, is my favorite music video. So just to give a little background, you guys know I have a bit of a film background, and something I always really was into was music videos. I really feel like music videos are an art form of their own, and when they're done right, they can really be transcendent and go beyond both the music side and the visual side. And there's a lot of them that I could talk about that I really love, that I think are brilliant. Radiohead has plenty of them. But the one that I've always come back to that is my favorite music video of all time is a version of Live's Turn My Head video. So yeah, as you can see at the bottom of this, it says inspired by the paintings of John Register. This video got me interested in this guy's artwork, and I'll talk about it in just a second because that's another one of my favorite things. But this video it's a work of art. It was directed by a guy named Jake Scott, who I think is in like the Ridley Scott family. So there's Ridley Scott, Jake Scott. Oh, who's the other one? Tony Scott. Jake Scott, I believe, actually passed away for some reason not too long ago, but he directed this video, and the lighting and the cinematography in this and the composition of the shots are just so gorgeous. And like this has officially become one of these things where it's like, if I at some point in my life could shoot anything that looks as good as this video, then I will have served my purpose in the world as far as I'm concerned. But there's also a theme in this video that I've picked up as I've watched it over and over again, which is order to disorder. Like at the beginning of the video, everything is super clean. The chairs are perfectly lined up here. Oh, the way the shadow of the light crosses through that clock right there. So now they're rearranging the chairs. They're messing up the chairs a little bit. This guy's like flinging rubber bands, and in a second he's going to close these. This shot right here, it just kills me. This is just the most gorgeous shot ever. Yeah, this moment right here is just stellar, the way they did this. But now you guys start to see the order to disorder a little bit. See, he's closing the things randomly. So now we're closing the blinds, giving them a little bit off symmetrical. This shot, look at that. It's ridiculous. So now everything is out of order. Disorder has occurred. And then right here at the end, you just barely see his face. Just barely, and then it cuts away immediately. You might notice at the bottom down here it says alternate version, because for some reason this was not the main. This was like a side video that they did. The main video for this song is just this generic guy singing in a thing, and like, this is just a generic rock video. There's nothing interesting about this at all. Now, why this was considered the main video, and the alternate version was this work of art that to my mind is like the best music video ever made. Blows my mind. I cannot imagine why, but that's what has happened here. But my love for this video has spawned a love for the painter John Register that this video was based on. His work, for some reason, I don't know, it instills this deep deja vu for me. It's always very isolating. Maybe this is a good artist to check into when you're isolated and quarantined right now. But there's never any people in his paintings. But a lot of these may look familiar. He often gets mistaken for Edward Hopper. They're kind of from the same school of painting. But you can see in some of these paintings exactly what they were taking inspiration from in that video. But this one I love. It's called The Waiting Room to the Beyond. It's just a really cool painting. This is now one of my life goals is to be rich enough to actually have one of his paintings and hang it up in my room somewhere. They're always of these like traveling, empty travel places, diners out in the middle of nowhere, always empty. It just kind of feels like you're going on a road trip. Okay, this one right here. For some reason, the use of light in his paintings is just spectacular, which is why they captured it so well in that video. But this one particularly, I don't know why, but it gives me profound deja vu when I look at it. It just feels like I've been there. And I think part of that is because, when I was growing up in the 80s, especially the early 80s, I grew up in this really small town, and a lot of the design was still really old. And I still had that sort of old barbershop feel to it. In a lot of the places that we went to where I grew up and where like my grandparents lived and stuff. And some of my grandparents' actual, furniture looks like that. Looks like this right here. And I don't know if that's why I get drawn to it so much, but there's just something very visceral and emotional about these paintings to me. And I just kind of completely fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it so much that I actually bought a book. I've had this for a while now, but there's a book called Persistent Observer. And it's like kind of a rare book, or at least at the time when I got it, it was kind of a rare book. And I had to spend quite a bit of money on it. But that's okay, because it has like all of his work in here, and it tells a lot about his life and how he did, the stuff that he did. And as you can see, obviously I can't show it to you all right here, but yeah, so anyway, if you've never heard of John Register, you now have a reason to go check out his work, and I'm telling you, it's some of my favorite stuff. Okay, another thing that I've discovered recently that has become kind of one of my favorite things, it's another throwback to when I was a kid, which is there was a band that I listened to when I was a kid, and I had their album. They really only had one album, and I think they had some singles after that. But there was a band called The Breakfast Club. So The Breakfast Club was, again, they only had one album. This was their big hit song. It was called Right on Track. I'll bring it up there so you can see the name of it. But this is not the movie. It has nothing to do with the movie The Breakfast Club. It was a band called The Breakfast Club. And I'll let the song play here in a second. You might recognize it, you might not. But as you can see, they were very silly. They only had a few videos, only two really that I know of. There might have been another one. But it starts off with this weird little sketch, and this guy, right, like they're all very like over the top in their exaggerated performances and everything. And they got paper all over the walls, and the guy's got the hat. And I mean, when I was a kid, I thought it was great. Of course, I was a goofy kid, and I loved, humor and stuff. And but then I got their album, and I just couldn't stop playing it. So the reason I bring up this band that has not been around or done anything in a very, very, very long time is because there's a documentary that came out last year about them. Now, here's the thing about this band. that has always been kind of interesting. Madonna used to be in this band. Before they made this album, before all this happened, Madonna was in this band. And so I always knew that, and I always thought that was like a weird, funny thing about this band that like hardly anybody's ever heard of. But there's a documentary that came out called Madonna and the Breakfast Club. And it interviews these guys, who of course are quite old now, but it tells their whole story. Like the lead singer, this goofy lead singer guy, they always have these chickens in there. They have this thing about chickens in all their videos. I don't get it. But yeah, this lead singer, his name is Dan Gilroy. The other guy, this guy with the hat, that's actually his brother, Ed Gilroy. But Dan Gilroy was dating Madonna for a couple of years there. And she lived in this house. They had this old synagogue that got abandoned, and they basically just moved in. And this was when she first moved from Michigan to New York. And she lived with these guys, and they just kind of introduced her to music. Like, she didn't really know what she wanted to be before she moved to New York. She just knew she wanted to be famous. So she, wanted to sing. She wanted to dance. She wanted to act. She was taking dancing classes and whatnot. But she fell in with these guys. And they started making this music. And some of the music that they were playing in the documentary was punk. It was like punk music. That blew my mind. The Madonna was singing punk music, but then that these guys were singing punk music. But the drummer, who will come up here in a minute, he was actually one of the writers of like Lucky Star and some of Madonna's first big hit songs. And so basically what happened, the whole reason this album happened was because, Madonna had been playing with them. She kind of went off and did her own thing. This guy wrote some music for her. So he got some clout as somebody who had written songs for Madonna. Well, he was in this band, and so he was able to get this band's album done. And so the only reason this band got their album made was because they knew Madonna back in the day. But so this is the big popular song. There was another one called Kiss and Tell, which is actually a pretty great little song. But one of the little stories in the documentary was that Madonna had already been big at this point. She had Lucky Star had come out, the first album. I think she was already on to Like a Virgin by the time this came out. And she actually showed up for the filming of this video unannounced. Nobody knew she was coming, but she just kind of showed up and was like hanging out with the guys and apparently all the crew and everything. Like, she was huge at that point, and all the crew was like, "How the hell do you guys know Madonna?" And of course he's like, "Nah, I dated her, whatever." And you know what's funny? I really hate this video because it's a pretty great song, and it's kind of an old doo-woppy kind of song. And then they just had to be so silly with it. But of course, when I was a kid, I thought that was great. But this guy, like, it's a slow song, and he's doing all these, like, weird, twitchy, spazzy, dancey things, and it's kind of terrible. But anyway, it's a great song, and the album, when I saw that documentary, it made me want to go back and listen to the album, which I did. So, and by the way, the movie here, I can turn that off now. The movie is right here. It's on Prime Video. I swear I watched it on a Hulu, though. So I think it's available on Hulu as well. But it's really interesting that the girl that they got to play Madonna, they did a lot of recreations in the movie, in the documentary. They did interviews with the band. Madonna's actually not in there, but the girl they got to play Madonna, she looks exactly like her. Like, that is not actually Madonna in that picture you're looking at right there. That is the actress they got to play her, and she looks amazingly like her. It was actually pretty great. By the way, I got a nasty zit right there, which is lovely. And with all this hand washing, I've had to up my moisturizing game. So I've actually been using this stuff as Nivea Men Creme. This is another one of my favorite things. Let's just include that. This actually smells really, really good. I've started just using this as opposed to cologne. This smells better than the cologne that I have. Or colon, should I say colon? This smells better than my colon. The next favorite thing I'm going to say is my favorite coffee in the world, which is from a place right down the street from where I live called Cultivar Coffee here in Dallas. Because like everybody right now, they're really struggling. They had to lay off like 75% of their workforce, just so they could collect unemployment benefits. So I'm going to shout them out here, but don't be surprised if you see me give them like a free promo in a future video on the main channel. But yeah, so it is a place right down the street where I can go get my own coffee, but I'm shouting it out here because you can order their beans online. So they actually have, well, you can get right here. They have coffee subscriptions. You can subscribe and just get their stuff sent to you. They got, I mean, all different kinds of blends: Ethiopia, El Salvador. There's a Costa Rica. Yeah, there it is. And they actually go and source these beans themselves, roast them. Like, they're the real deal. So I cannot shout these guys out enough. If you're into coffee and you've never tried Cultivar or never heard of them before, please support these guys. They're an amazing coffee shop, and they're really good people. And last but not least, I'm doing a lot of music on this. I guess I'm listening to a lot of music with everything that's going on, but one of the bands that I've been listening to a lot more lately, and I don't know why, it's just been rattling around in my head a lot, is another local band from Denton, Texas. So Denton is the home of the University of North Texas. That's where I went to school, so I lived there for several years. And it's sort of a hotbed of musical talent because the University of North Texas has like the best jazz program in the country, or at least it did when I went there, maybe second to Juilliard. And so a lot of musicians go to Denton to learn their craft. And as it works out, they wind up forming bands, and some really great musicians and bands that come out of there. The Eagles, actually, it's just Eagles. It's not the Eagles, but Don Henley and all those guys, they actually came from UNT, and that's where they got their name. The Eagles are the UNT mascot. So one little thing you know there. But there's this band out of Denton that I've actually been in love with for quite some time, and their name is Midlake. So if you have never heard of Midlake, I've got it up here on my Spotify, and I'll play some of it for you in just a second. But Midlake has a few different albums, and they actually, I don't think they're really even together anymore. I think their last album came out in 2013 or something like that. But their first album, or their first big album, they had an EP that came out before this, but their first big album was called The Trials of Van Occupanther. And it's they get compared to Fleetwood Mac quite a bit. So here, let me show you a little bit. So this song is called Roscoe. This is their most popular song off of this album, pretty much by a long shot. Stone cutters made them from stones. So it's very, I don't want to call it folksy, but it's very Americana kind of rock. This whole album has sort of, you can see in the music video, it has this very old frontier vibe to it. You could call it a concept album because every single song is man out of time. It's all, they reference a lot of frontier stuff, and Little House on the Prairie kind of comes to mind, that kind of lifestyle. It's a concept album. You can't really figure out exactly what the story is. It doesn't really have much of a story, but you still kind of follow some characters and the arc of the time that they're living in and whatnot. But it's also just some fantastic music. Here's another little piece of it. So again, this was back in 2006, 2007 or something like that. I can kind of run through some of their other albums here, or other songs on the album. So let me just play this one little bit here from Bandits. But they have this crazy harmony going on, and it's very cinematic. I think that's the word that comes to mind for me here. So they came down from the north, carrying all they own, a basket full of food and clothes. So some of it is very slow and layered, like that one is, and then there's others Head Home actually has a little bit of a beat to it. Be around. They must have all gone off without me again. I think I'll head home. So there's Van Occupanther. That was their first one that really went big. Their second album This one is like, okay, so if Van Aki Panther took place in, like, say, the American, westward expansion era, this took place in, like, medieval times, which you can kind of tell just from the album artwork. But this is, like, very dirgy, and there's a lot of flutes being played, and it's a very different kind of album, and it wasn't, I didn't really like it at first, but the more I listened to it, it's just becomes so layered, and there's just so much going on in it that, like, you just kind of get sucked into it.
From the sea to line for all that fortune brings, and all that certainly lay upon it when anger is seen, and it rains like the others, giving what all it can, while the days count for nothing that one of.
Again, it might be a bit of an acquired taste, but it's become one of my favorite albums. It's become one of my favorite albums to just, like, lay back and listen to, like, deep listening, You don't get to do that very often now. I always like listening to stuff while I'm doing other things. This one is an album that you can just sit there and listen to and just absorb it and just be taken away by it. Here's a song called Children of the Ground that has a little bit more of a beat to it. Here we go.
We're raised in a town where they jump on your back and sing, leaving an imprint on your shoulder blades when we walk away. We're not all the same in this town. We're raised in a town where they jump on your back like children, and they leave you numb, they will leave you lying, and we're all undone in this town.
I'm telling you, you're going to be singing along with it so quickly. So the third album, the lead singer, his name was Tim Smith, and he was actually one of the lead songwriters, and he left after The Courage of Others. And they did release another album called Antiphon, and it's a bit of a different style, but it's pretty great on its own. So I just played, like, a little bit of this first one, and you'll get a little taste of what it
Find the poor on and down before it even takes, and the files. I want more.
Anyway, do anybody out there who has never heard of Midlake and you don't know anything about them? As you can see, they're on Spotify. There's only 3 albums on there, so it's pretty easy to read or listen if you want to just kind of go and check them out. I wanted to share that with you. For some reason, I've been listening to them a lot more. I think it's because maybe with the quarantining and the isolation, there's a little bit more time to just kind of sit and really reflectively listen to music. And this is music that really screams to be, like, sat down and listened to in ways that others don't. But yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I've probably played way too much music, and it's probably clearly going to be demonetized or copyright stricken now or whatever, but I don't care. Whatever. I wanted to kind of pass those on to you guys. I wanted to share some of the stuff that I've been listening to that's been giving me a little bit of joy in all this. Maybe you'll enjoy it too. But anyway, there you go. I hope this was interesting. I hope those sparked some things that you might want to go look at. And let me know what you think. And if you're familiar with any of this stuff and you have ideas or thoughts about them, please share them down below. If you have something that you love, that you've been really getting into and just using to kind of get through all this, please do share, and we can kind of spread the love around. So, yeah, something different. I tried. All right. You guys take care. Be safe out there. I'll see you next time.